if you digitize your processes, so you know exactly, like how many goods or how many products go from A to B, then you need to further automate. And automate means I'm taking the data and I'm going to make sure that a lot of my processes are not manual anymore. So I'm automating the reporting, I'm automating a lot of the decisions as well. So the automation is a very important part because then you take out the manual part. And the third element there is the network effect. So I have to make sure that all of the individual elements in the supply chain are linked together.
Welcome to the Shipping Podcast, where I meet interesting maritime professionals sharing their passion for the shipping industry and their everyday job. I am your host. My name is Lena Gosberg. Hello, Shipping Podcast listeners, and welcome to episode 238. If you are tuning in for the first time, you're in for a treat, and if you enjoy it, there are 237 previous episodes to explore. In this episode, I had the pleasure of reconnecting with Mathijs Slangen, whom I met a long time ago. He is now the Vice President of Sales and Marketing Europe for Flexport. And we talked about the importance of digitizing the supply chain, among other things.
Every conversation matters.
Welcome to the Shipping Podcast. Could you please introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you for having me here, Lena. My name is Mathijs Slangen. I am the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Flexport in Europe. Thank you for having me on this podcast.
And what is your background?
Yeah, so I've been I'm very passionate about our industry, about logistics and supply chain, and I've been in the industry for, I think, roughly 16 years or something in different roles. I've worked on the ocean liner shipping side. I've been in consulting. I've been in road freight, air freight, all different types of roles, always commercial roles, business development kind of roles, and always related to the industry that I'm most passionate about, which is logistics and supply chain.
And what is your education? How did you start out?
I started at Maastricht University in international business. And this is also where I actually started getting interest in supply chain strategies, etc. And after my study, I actually started working for EY, right? So a little bit broader. But I had the opportunity to actually learn a lot about many different industries. And this is also where I further developed my interest and passion for the logistics and supply chain industry for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I think it's extremely tangible what we're doing, right? Everything around us is logistics and supply chain, and we're impacting every part of that business. It's extremely international, right? So you're dealing with all kinds of people around the world. And there's still a lot of room for improvement, right? So there's still a massive amount of challenges out there, and I'm very happy to be able to contribute to that, even if it's only small, right? But to see how we can make it a better place.
So, what are the biggest changes that you have seen? I mean, you've been around for roughly 15 years now, then.
Yeah. This is interesting because there's a lot of topics that haven't changed, right? So we've been talking about big data. That term is not used that much anymore, but it was in the past, and about how to connect that and how to use that more in our industry. So I think that that's still a topic which is on the table. We have made some good progress there. I think if you look at the transparency that we currently have in the market in terms of where we are, who is doing what, etc., and which parties are involved, that have drastically increased. Now the only thing is, how do we connect all this data and all this information? But we have definitely become a lot more global in that sense than we were 15, 16 years ago.
So what are the obstacles then? Why doesn't it happen quicker?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I also ask me that question, quite a lot. So it's actually about why our digitization strategy is not happening as fast as we want, right? Because there's clearly a need for it. And I think there's a couple of elements why it's actually not going as fast as we want. I think one of the big ones is there is, in many cases, when we're looking at these type of projects, a lot of companies actually go for this big bang approach, which means, hey, there is a need in my organization to change something. And I am going to, because my systems are obsolete or are not up to the latest and greatest. So I'm going to talk to many different people in my organization, and my wish list, or my, the Christmas wish list of tasks and features that I want to have in my new setup is only going to increase and increase to a certain point that it becomes more or less unmanageable, right? And that's what we see happening a lot. Too many people involved, projects being too big, and then also too costly or taking too long. And then those are projects that are doomed to fail. And that's frightens a lot of companies to say, like, yes, we've done this in the past, we've invested in that, it didn't work, so let's take it a little bit slower. So opting for the big bang is a big one. I also think that what I'm seeing is that visibility, which is obviously a key word in our industry, is being treated more or less as some sort of the end goal. So as soon as I have visibility, as soon as I have a big screen in my office where I can see exactly where each airplane, ship, and truck is, then I have something very good in hand. But actually, that visibility is only the start. I mean, now that you can see it, you have to act on it, and you have to make sure that you know exactly who is taking action there. So what we also see is that companies stop too early. They say, like, I have the visibility now, I have a platform, or I have a tool that allows me to do it, but actually not taking the next step there. So you're only halfway if you look at visibility.
So give me an example of the most wanted project on your top 10 list amongst companies. I mean, what are you talking about? Are you talking about sort of booking a shipment, or I mean, I don't know what you're talking about.
Maybe it's good to explain this, what we do as Flexport, right? I mean, that's probably a good way to start. So actually what we do is we move the products of our customers and with our customers as a freight forwarder, if you will, in the most tech-enabled way from A to B. That's what we do. We do this by actually linking all the different data points that they have, and we track the actions, the document flows, etc., the financial information. We put that all together. You could compare it to, like on TV, you have these emergency room series, right? Where you look into an emergency room and there's always this emergency physician. And the emergency physician is actually the orchestrator of everything. And his or her task is to, manage the whole situation there. And they do that by looking at, do I have the right historical data of the patient? Do I have the right experts around me? Everyone knows exactly what they need to be, what they need to do, right? So he or she is always saying, talk to me, give me that information, right? And based on that, based on those interactions, they make their decisions, and they make their decisions fast and accurate to keep the patient alive. That is exactly what we're doing as well, right? We're allowing this emergency physician to do for our customers, as our customer, actually to do whatever they need to do to get their goods from A to B. We give them all the information, but we're also part of their team. We're one of those experts actually in their team, taking care of their customs, taking care of the goods, taking care of their warehouse situation, taking care of the insurance, etc. So it's a combination of those two. So I think that's a good analogy to know a little bit what we as Flexport are doing. So we try to connect everything in our industry, the data, the processes, and the people.
And what is the hardest part of those three?
Yeah, the hardest part, that's a good one. I think if you look at those projects, right, where you try to digitize and further optimize the supply chains of our customers, then there's always three things that you need to do. And those three things need to be always linked together. Obviously, you need to digitize. You need to make sure that you create a digital representation of whatever is happening there, right? Everything needs to be in data, so they say. If you digitize your processes, so you know exactly, like how many goods or how many products go from A to B, then you need to further automate. And automate means I'm taking the data and I'm going to make sure that a lot of my processes are not manual anymore. So I'm automating the reporting, I'm automating a lot of the decisions as well. So the automation is a very important part, because then you take out the manual part. And the third element there is the network effect. So I have to make sure that all of the individual elements in the supply chain are linked together. So let's assume that I'm shipping my goods from Vietnam to the UK, and I'm only digitizing or focusing on, let's say, the air freight leg from one to the other, and I'm not focusing on the part from the factory to the airport, etc., the customs element, and also in the warehousing, then then I've only focused on one piece of the supply chain. And the trick is to focus on all of the elements to make sure that you connect all of the different parts of your supply chain end to end. So the trick is, the most challenging part is to combine these three: digitization, automation, and the network effect. You need to do all of these three together. If you fail on one of them, then your whole digitization strategy is actually very suboptimal. And that's the challenge. That's the challenge, because it's complex and you need to have a lot of people on board.
Yeah, but it's also, I mean, I've been doing this podcast for 9 years almost. At the beginning, I could see that I'm talking on the maritime part of the supply chain. As you know, the ship owners started to realize maybe we need to be a little bit more transparent. Not transparent, but a little bit more transparent. And then they thought, ooh, digitalization. Maybe I could have a consultant do that for me.
Yes.
And then that happened for a couple of years. And then they started to realize, it's bigger, it's more. Maybe I should buy a startup. They bought an entire sort of department into their big operation.
Yeah.
And that didn't work, because it's got to do with more things within the company. It's got to do with culture. It's got to do with who is at the C-level, who is deciding, what do they know? Or am I right?
I think you're spot on there, and I think that if you look at digitization, this is not something that you can bolt on to your existing organization. It needs to be part of your DNA. It needs to be. I think you're super right. It needs to be part of your thinking process. In everything that you do, your first step should be: am I able to digitize this flow, this process, or do I need to add more people to it to do it? So yeah, if you would acquire a startup or a software tool, which is obviously perfectly fine, or you're going to try to do it yourself. Those are all perfectly fine, as long as you have, like, you make this the core of your business, right? I think that's a very important one. At Flexport, it's roughly 1/3 of our people are engineers, continuously working on developing products for our own people and for our customers at the same time. That's a significant part of our organization. That's also very challenging, right? Because, like from a cost structure perspective, that's not easy to keep that all in balance and in sync. So focus is extremely important there. But we've both been in this industry quite long, and we've been talking about these topics already for a long time. If it was easy, it would have been done already, right? So it is a massive thing to achieve, and you shouldn't think too lightly about it, because if you are, then you're not going to get there. The most important part there is to make it modular, to make sure that you can make small steps, increase your organization, but also make sure that you have the possibility to expand that and to grow in that. So there's no issue in saying, like, I'm going to focus first on, let's say, further automating my warehouse process. That's perfectly fine, as long as you make sure that in the end it can be coupled to other processes in your organization, and that the same data is used. One of the biggest issues is dirty data. So I have different silos of data in my organization, and I cannot connect them, and I'm making wrong decisions because I don't know if the data is correct or not. So the element of data stewardship is still very underestimated, I would say. So that's like, someone needs to control the data in my organization. Someone needs to be also held accountable for that.
Yeah. If I continue on my what I've seen, it's nowadays ship owners are employing people to do digitization, as you say. Of course, they have to. But then again, I think, well, the average ship owner owns 10 ships.
Yes.
So it's not the big ones we're talking about. The big ones know how to do this and are putting a lot of money, I think, into it. So in one way, it's not that easy to keep up with everyone else if you are. I mean, you can compare that to if you own 10 lorries or 10, I don't know, not 10 airplanes, I don't think, but, but something like that. But on the other hand, if there are big platforms that you can sort of jump onto or add on your business to. Maybe that is the solution for the smaller ones. I don't know.
Yes, 100%. Because, the developments are going fast and it's not your core business, right? For a company that operates with 10 lorries, for instance, or a couple of ships, it's not your core business to be top of mind of what's happening in the data field. And even if you hire or employ 1, 2, 3, like really smart engineers there, you cannot compete with the larger companies who have massive amount of people actually doing this. So you're right. And I think that you shouldn't do that. You should stick to your core business. Your task is then to find out which providers are out there. How are they working? Like how independent are they, etc. Like how transparent are they about their setup? How flexible are they? Like how can I link this to other products, etc. And that's the key there. That's where you need to. But this is where you need to spend an awful amount of time on in understanding exactly what the company is doing. I mean, there's so many companies who go out there right now and say like, we are a SaaS company, we have a platform, and we use machine learning and AI. I have no clue what that means, right? So, you need to dig deep then. And you need to see like, well, but what are you actually doing? Are you linking, let's say, different data points all together and create that visibility for me? Or am I able to actually operate on your platform? Can I, look, so those are the questions that you need to ask. And, we have this we share with our customers as well, like, hey, if you are looking at other software providers or whatever, these are the questions that you should ask. And that's where I think I would spend, as a smaller company, a disproportionate amount of time on in trying to understand exactly what's out there and how does this work.
I mean, also, if you're talking about 1/3 of engineers, they are a different breed than the salespeople and the people from the shipping industry. So how do you cope with that? I mean, if you're a bigger company.
I mean, that is super interesting, right? Because what you get is a very interesting dynamics going on where you have a lot of people who are not hindered or limited by any historical knowledge about what's going on in our business. So they're not going to say like, well, we've done this and this is not working, etc. Or you need to think of this. They think in options, they think in solutions, etc. And that's also what we try to do, right? We try to, when we're hiring our people, we're telling them, we try to hire, obviously, as any company, the best people out there. But we tell them, we would like you to tell us what we need to do. We are not going to tell you what you need to do. We would like you to guide us. We hired you because you have an incredible talent and you have, like a solution-oriented mindset. And that's what we want. That's what we need. So that combination is an interesting one. So then you can actually have people looking at a specific product and they say like, well, if I look at it like this, I would solve it like this. And if you combine that with people who have industry knowledge and say like, I really like this, but we have to take into account this or this or that, then you get an interesting dynamic. Then it's going to be an interesting way of going forward. But that requires a lot of focus also on culture and on cooperation, etc., and those kind of things.
And a bit of courage on both sides to actually say what you think and maybe be a little bit humble to listen to someone, a young engineer, coming to tell you, well, this is how I see it.
And I think that if you would ask any entrepreneur right now, successful entrepreneur, why they are successful and what they give as an advice, then firstly, they will always say you need to focus, right? So you need to be very dedicated to your vision or your mission and what you want to achieve. Customer first, obviously. But they will also say you need to be willing and able to fail and probably fail fast. And that's something that you need to do. I mean, like you need to experience, you need to try things. And then you need to say like, you know what, we've tried it didn't work. Okay, back to the drawing board and we start again. But if you start already by saying like, what if we fail, then you're not going to be creative enough to actually achieve something. So it's very important indeed to create that culture where people are listening to each other and people are allowed to make mistakes.
So where do you see progress in the maritime industry? Where do you see, I mean, is that a geographical one, or is it the big ones, or is it, I don't know, where do you see progress when it comes to digitization from the maritime point of view?
I think there is in the maritime segment and specifically there's also a lot of ship owners who are currently, and also companies looking more at like bulk cargo. They are more looking at digitization, to my surprise, to a certain extent, right? If I look at
why is that a surprise?
Well, if I look at the value add that we, for instance, bring to our customers, most of our customers are also in the retail industry. They have a lot of different products and they're very close to the end consumer who wants to know where their goods are, right? So I think that makes a lot of sense, that you need to have a lot of, like visibility and control over your supply chain. If you have bulk shipment or commodities that you're shipping, then obviously, like there's not like 5,000 different products like you sometimes see in a container in one vessel. So the value add that you can bring by creating this visibility is probably a little bit less. But at the same time, what I'm learning is that specifically in that part of the industry, there's even a lot more manual processes taking place. So the upside of actually further digitizing your supply chain is definitely big. So I'm seeing a lot of companies actually being very successful in that in that part of the business as well. I think it is definitely on the agenda of most companies out there, right? So I think that's definitely good. I do think that the gap will widen. I think that there's companies who are adopting digitization and are working with that already. And we have right now, I mean, one of the other areas why we see in our industry actually these projects failing is because there's a deficit of talent. It's very difficult to find people who are extremely good in logistics or freight forwarding or managing transportations, and at the same time also analytically or data, very strong from a data and analytics point of view. That combination is difficult to find. Always has been, right? So every company that you talk to will say like, I need more talent. What you can do is actually right now is have the data work for you. So with more tools that we have out there right now, the only thing you need to do is you gather the data, you almost insert it into, like any kind of AI tool that's out there, and you have a result. So I'm not saying that it's super plug and play, but it is easier right now to do a lot of data analysis and actually prescriptive, using the data in a more prescriptive way than we used to have. So the companies who are actually the front runners here, who are gathering that data and doing that in the right way by making sure that the data is of good quality, they will make more use of all of the tools that are out there and actually creating a little bit of a bigger gap with those who are not doing that. So that's what we're seeing right now. Is we see definitely some leaps forward with the front runners in the organization.
So how do you clean your data? You're coming back to that all the time. How do you do that?
Yeah, so I mean, that's a very good question, right? So I think the most important part there is you have to make sure you should, as a journalist, for instance, you should never rely on one source. You always need multiple sources because that's the only way how you can validate that. But that's what we do. So we make sure that we gather as many different data points as possible. So if, let's say, a shipping line tells us, hey, your container has arrived, then we would like to check that also with, for instance, the terminal operator or the trucking company who's actually physically moving that container to the to the port or the airport or whatsoever. And we want to check that with the customs authority. Did you actually, also get the same information? So we're gathering as many different data points as possible to validate, let's say, the quality of the data points. And if you do that in the right way, you can actually also take out all of the discrepancies or the outliers or the holes that you have in your data by using that other data, right? So that's how you can actually not only you can clean that data in the best possible way. Last but not least, we're making sure that everyone is looking at the same data. So, and in that sense, right, if you see that the data is not correct or whatsoever, the feedback loops are super short, and you can go to the root cause there. So I think that's those are the most important parts to focus on.
I live in Gothenburg, so here is the automotive industry. So all the software developers for every brand in the car industry is here.
Yeah.
And I mean, they are talking about standardization and how important that is. Do we have that in our industry?
It's a good question. I think specifically if you look at it from a sustainability perspective, there's still some room for further standardization and making sure that everyone is looking at the same thing. So we are actually reporting out on CO2 emissions, etc., and those kind of things. But the way how we do it and how we measure it, what standards are we using, is let's say there's room for improvement there. It gets a lot of attention, so I think that's good. But there's still a long way to go there. And this is also when we are talking to customers about, as I said, we regularly talk to customers about the how clean their data is, or and they're mentioning, well, from a freight perspective, we're relatively okay. From a sustainability perspective, everyone is offering it, everyone is looking at it, but we haven't really found the absolute standard there, gold standard on how to do this. And there's more certification coming out there, and also more and more companies actually being certified on how they calculate it. But there's still a lot of room for growth there. I think we will see that in the upcoming at least 2 years, a lot of improvement there. And that will definitely impact a lot of companies who are not focusing on that right now. And it's good. I think it's good to get more standardization there.
I don't know if this is a good analogy, but I learned that, if you buy a new car and you can actually almost drive it with your mobile. and depending on if you have an Android phone or an iPhone, it's different. But the industry in automotive decided to go on the same basic system, and then you can build on that Android or Apple iPhone.
Yeah.
So the bottom layer there, isn't that what we are missing in a way? Do you understand what I'm trying to ask you?
Yes. Obviously, the automotive industry is pretty advanced when it comes to processes, because if you look at the impact of what, like a hiccup in the automotive industry and in the process of the automotive industry has on the final production, but also production errors, what those have on, what kind of incidents they can cause. This gets a lot of attention, right, from these organizations for a long time already. And I think it's right. And I think that a lot of companies in the automotive industries can justify actually spending a lot of time from consultants on this to actually design processes that are exactly fit to what they need to do. I don't think that every company can do that, right? An e-commerce company who is shipping yoga pants from one place to the other probably, doesn't have the same means there. So I think, the idea is there actually to see how can we bring those standardizations that you see in the automotive industry a little bit further down to the rest of the organization. And that starts with actually creating, an overview of what's happening, that transparency is important. Yeah, a standard, more standards would definitely would help our industry, I think.
So where do you recruit your engineers? I mean, how do you get out there to get the best people possible? Because I think everyone wants to know. Everyone is doing the same thing. So could you give us some tips, or you don't want to do that maybe?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the important part there is that you create a very clear vision for your organization and a mission of what you want to achieve, right? So we want to make global trade as easy as possible for our customers, so that there will also be even more trade out there, right? So that it's super simple for you to move goods from A to B, because we believe that it's not very easy right now to do this, right? So that's our goal. That's what we try to do. And that's a very clear goal that we have in mind, and that that culture, or at least what we are trying to do there, is very visible also to the people who we are reaching out to. So they understand what we're trying to do, and they understand how we try to make the world a little bit better. And I think that's one of the most important parts to focus on, is to make sure that you have an identity as a company. And we as Flexport are also seen as in the industry as a little bit of a disruptor, if you will, or a challenger, which comes with a reputation that allows us to also attract people who are willing to go the extra mile and try these things and maybe embrace chaos a little bit, right? Because that's what we need. So it starts there. I think it starts with creating a proper foundation of your organization and your mission and your vision.
So how can we as an industry become more visible? I mean, I think to reach the young people, we need to tell them what we're doing.
Yeah.
And we hardly do. I mean, the maritime industry is on the front page when there is a ever given in the canal or when there is a ship sinking somewhere.
Yeah, and that's it, right? And when we're talking also to our customers, they're saying like, those events are obviously not good for our industry. They're perfect for me as someone responsible for supply chain in our organization, because all of a sudden I get all the attention that I need from the board level, because it's hampering the growth of the business, so to say. So it's very, very sad actually that we need those events for supply chain to be top of mind. I do think that there's a lot of companies out there right now who understand that one of the most important parts there is not only to produce a good or product that is really wanted by customers. There's a lot of companies who can do that, but the role of, let's say, the shipping industry of getting those goods at the right time, at the right moment, is more important than ever, right? The competition is cutthroat at the moment, and it's even more global, right? And they're coming from all different angles. So the realization of the importance of supply chains on your business model is definitely increasing. And by that, I think that also more and more young people, young talent are seeing how important this is. I mean, we have numerous examples of good companies who are very successful and place an awful lot of attention on actually making sure that they can deliver their goods on Sunday and they take back the old goods, etc., those kind of things. So there's good examples out there. So I think we're on the right way, to be honest. But I think that we also still need in the future, unfortunately, a few of those events that are disrupting the supply chains.
Yeah, we got a bridge at the moment causing
Exactly.
attention in the United States. So.
Yes.
Do you have a role model? Did you ever have that when you grew up?
No, I don't really have a specific role model. I am always very intrigued by persons who are able to stick to their course and to actually keep on focusing on that, whatever is thrown at them. And I try to live in the same way, I must say, right? So I think the most important part, and especially for fast growing companies like us, is not to determine what you're going to do, but to determine what you're not going to do, because there's so many interesting opportunities out there to focus on, etc. And what could distract you a little bit from what you're doing. And this requires discipline and focus on that. And people who are good at that, who are able to stick to the course, to tell a story which to me is compelling, or like where they can. I really admire that, and I strive to get to a similar position like that.
So who would you be interested in listening to in the shipping podcast? Who do you think I should interview the next?
I think that like there's a couple of front runners in our industry, I would say, that are extremely interested. I like companies like Einride, for instance. I think you know them. They're a little bit closer to home for you as well, maybe geographically. But those are definitely very, very interesting companies, I would say, to listen to. Yeah, maybe also manufacturers who are taking their supply chain very seriously, and they have changed a little bit their models. Those would be interesting as well to talk to, I would say.
So, what is the best part of being VP of Sales and Marketing in Flexport Europe?
The best part is always when you have, as a company or as a person, an idea, and you're working on that product, and which is a tough one to develop. And the most, for me, by far the best part is when a customer says, I like this product. I want to try this. I want to go for this. So that you see that something that you are jointly developing that's actually picked up by the market. I mean, there's no, for someone who's in sales, there's no better, I would say, moment than those. So I really like that. It's like we're working, like we're developing products very fast, and then we see that our customers actually like it. That's gold.
Thank you very much, Mathijs, for taking part in my podcast. It was really, really an enjoyable conversation, I think.
It was my pleasure. I love talking about these topics.
Thank you.
Every conversation matters.
Thank you, Mathijs, for your time. I'm confident that my listeners have taken notes and are now exploring transparency, automation, and their dirty data. You gave me hope for the future. I can see change happening, and I appreciate it. Another takeaway from this episode is the importance of building and maintaining a network in your business. You never know when you might need help with something, or when you can assist, and be acknowledged for that. Just look where it has taken me. Thank you for listening. That's all for now. Until the next time, from me to you, over and out. Thank you for listening to the Shipping Podcast. Don't forget to tell everyone that you meet that there is a shipping podcast available, and that they should download it and listen to the maritime professionals who are sharing their passion for the shipping industry.